As an adoption consultant, I have heard quite a few families say that while they feel comfortable adopting, they do not feel comfortable adopting a child with special needs. However, in my opinion, it is pretty much impossible to adopt a child without special needs. Keep watching to find out why. Hey there, if you are one of my subscribers, thank you so much for coming back. You are near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate you very much. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Katie, and I'm an adoptive mom to 3 kids ages 5 through 12 who we adopted from foster care as waiting children. I'm also an adoption consultant, and I help families from all over the country get started on their adoption journeys. Whether you're not sure if adoption is right for you in your specific situation, or you're not sure which type of adoption is best to pursue, or if you just have no clue where to even start, that's where I come in. I currently offer both 1-hour consultations and 90-minute consultations. So if you are just getting started on this foster care adoption journey and you need some help, you need someone to walk alongside you, that's why I'm here. So I'll include a link to my website in the description box as well as in a pinned comment if you'd like to check it out to work with me. Okay, so now while you're really here, let's jump into this topic of special needs adoption and what that really means. So I think that for a lot of us, when we hear that term special needs, our minds automatically jump to the more high level or severe special needs a child may have. For example, we may think of a child who is wheelchair bound, who has some severe medical issues, maybe a lot of developmental and learning delays. Maybe it's a situation where it's nonverbal autism or some other similar type of issue that could make parenting a little bit harder and come with a lot more challenges, also some more rewarding things to it, but some challenges that some of us may not feel comfortable taking on. However, in the adoption world, special needs has a slightly different meaning, and I think this is where the confusion comes in. Because here's the thing, if you are interested in adopting and you find a potential agency to work with, and when you call them or email them, you say, hey, we want to adopt from foster care, but just so you know, we are not interested in special needs adoption, you may get a response you're not expecting from that agency. They may say something along the lines of, we're not able to work with people who won't consider special needs adoptions or things like that. But the truth is that in the adoption world, special needs adoption has a slightly different meaning than what you might expect. So according to Adopt US Kids, which is a really great website if you're looking for some resources, but it says the term special needs simply refers to children who qualify for adoption assistance, which is ongoing governmental, medical, and/or financial support after the adoption occurs due to specific factors. And so some of the factors that they list under this are that they're an older child, that they have a particular racial or ethnic background, that they are part of a sibling group needing to be placed together as one unit, that maybe it could include some medical conditions or some physical, mental, or emotional disabilities. But they clarify here that a child with special needs should not be confused with a child who requires special education. And I think that distinction is so important if you're looking into this adoption process, because you may give off the wrong impression to an agency you're thinking of working with if you say, I'm not interested in special needs adoption. Now, could some of the children who fall under this definition of special needs adoption still have some of those more severe issues? Of course. Obviously, we know there are kids in foster care who are considered hard to place because they have more severe special needs, maybe some cognitive delays where they just need extra support in their home. And there are families who do not feel like they can provide that. However, what that does not mean is it doesn't mean that if you're willing to do some sort of special needs adoption, that doesn't mean that you're going to be saying yes to a child who has these more intense needs, but it does show the agency that you are open to some different levels of needs that the children may have. So when you go through the home study process, part of your process is that they're going to have you fill out basically a huge checklist with all of the things that you're willing to consider when it comes to the child you adopt. I'm going to put an example here of the one from my state. I have shared this before, but you can see this is like a 4 or 5 page document, has every category you could possibly imagine, and different levels of severity for each case as well. But if you're interested in adopting a child who is potentially over the age of 7 or 8, that could be considered a special needs adoption. If you are interested in adopting siblings, even if those siblings are really young and maybe do not have any intense medical, emotional needs, they would still be considered a special needs adoption. There's all sorts of information here where you will check what types of background history the child has that you are okay with, all sorts of things. So you are not expected to just say yes to everything if you say yes to special needs adoption. One important thing to note about this list when you fill it out is just because you check yes, will consider, does not mean you are saying yes to any child that comes your way, any file that comes your way where a child may have some of those issues. What that means is you are going to have the ability to see that child's file. You're going to have the ability to be considered if you would like to. So I think a lot of times when people fill out this list, they think, oh, well, I don't know if I could handle a situation where a child had this type of need, but I'm not quite sure. Well, guess what? I would recommend that you say, yes, will consider on that if you're kind of on the fence, because all it means is that now you can read more information about a child who may have some of those needs and then determine if you would be the best family for that child. Because I don't want anyone to say yes to a specific situation or a specific child out of guilt or out of shame that they feel bad that they're not willing to take just any child who has whatever need, because the reality is we need to know our own limits. We need to know what we can handle, what we can afford. When it comes to taking care of a child with special needs, we need to think about our lifestyle and how it's currently set up, and do we have the margin to be able to take on these things? Because what we don't want to happen is say yes to everything, have a child come into our home, and then have a disrupted or failed adoption because we got ourselves in over our heads. So that is not what I want you to do. I do not want you to say yes to things out of guilt. But if you're on the fence, if you're kind of like, maybe I could handle that, but I'm not quite sure, check yes. Check yes that you will consider it. Because if a file comes your way and you read over about this child, you say, you know what? I know I said I'd consider this, but reading this and the reality of it, I'm not sure that we would be the best fit for this kid. That's fine. You have that ability to do that. No harm, no foul. And I think it's good to know those limits. But what I like to tell people is there's kind of a fine line between having good boundaries of what you're not okay with, but also being open to slightly push yourself. So a lot of times when I meet with clients and I end up talking to them, a lot of times I'll have people say, I only want to adopt a kid up to the age of 5. I totally get that. For us, when we first started the adoption process, we had never been parents before. And so we didn't like the idea of adopting an older kid who knows that we have no clue what we're doing. Whereas a younger kid, we could have a slightly more natural progression of, growing with them and figuring it out. And so when we started the process, we were also only open for up to the age of 5. As we began our classes and we began reading more and understanding more, we opened our range all the way up to 10. And I know that's a big jump, and I don't expect everyone to make that type of jump, but I'm glad we did, because we were able to see more files and understand different situations, and we actually had a match that almost worked out for an 8-year-old. I still think about him sometimes and think, that could have worked out. Even though we ended up adopting a much younger child, kind of surprisingly, that could have been a good match. And obviously, the second time we adopted, we did adopt older kids. So I do always encourage clients to maybe open up your age range by 2 or 3 years. So if you say your gut instinct says, I want to take a kid up to the age of 5, really ask yourself why. What's the difference in your mind between a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old? Are you worried about not having enough first-time experiences with them? Because let me tell you, it doesn't matter what age they are, you will have firsts with them because of the life they've lived before. But the truth is, especially with age, your kid is going to grow up anyway. 2 years from then, they're going to be 7. And, if you say you're only open to the age of 5, but let's say that you could have been a great fit for a child who just turned 6 years old. Well, guess what? You're never even going to see their file because you're only open to adopting up to the age of 5. So you'll miss out on seeing that file even if the kid's only like a week older than that. So I do encourage clients to kind of push that age range. Like if you're thinking 5, go 7. And just because maybe you see a file of a child who is 7 years old, that doesn't mean you have to say yes. If you read the file and you do not think you'd be a good parent for that kid, then you can say no and nothing bad happens. Additionally, there's a huge need for adopting siblings together to be able to keep them together. And I always encourage people too, if you're only open to one kid, maybe consider 2. You don't have to say yes to that. And I know there are situations where it just would not be wise to say yes to 2 kids. And I understand that. If you're there, I'm not telling you say you're open to 2. But if you're kind of on the fence, it might be worth saying, hey, we'll consider a sibling pair of 2 kids if it's a good fit, because it really could be a good option for you. And by opening up those parameters, you'll be able to see more files and have more potential matches. But here's the big point I want to drive home. Every single child who is adopted, whether they're adopted from foster care, whether they're adopted internationally, whether they're adopted at 10 years old or as a newborn, every single child who has been adopted has experienced loss and trauma. And so that is why I would argue that every adoption is a special needs adoption. Every child that is adopted has special needs that a child who was born to their family and stayed with their biological family their entire lives would not have. So my worry is that when people say, I don't want to do a special needs adoption, maybe the child they're picturing in their minds is a child who hasn't gone through these things, who doesn't have trauma. And the truth is, they will have some sort of trauma, or at least will be affected somehow by their adoption. Not to mention that, especially if you're adopting from foster care, I will be shocked if you get placed with a child who does not have anxiety, depression, or PTSD. I mean, pick one of them. The child will probably have that, and if they don't have it now, they will probably be diagnosed with it in the future, just simply because of what they have experienced. And I think if you're going into adoption, you have to be comfortable with the fact that could happen. You have to be okay with the fact that even if that child does not have a diagnosis like that now, they may in the future. They may struggle with the concept of being adopted in the future. They may have flashbacks and triggers in the future. So if you're going into adoption thinking, well, I want to adopt, but I don't want to adopt a kid with special needs, well, it's just not possible. And notice we call them special needs. We don't call them horrible needs or awful needs. They're special. There's something different that this child needs, and it's not anything to be ashamed of or to look down on. It's just they went through a different situation and they're going to need a little more support, and you're going to have to parent them in a different way. And so if you cannot accept that your child, no matter what, will have some sort of special need, some sort of need that is different from peers their age who have grown up with their biological families their entire lives, then I just don't think you should adopt, at least not yet. Maybe you need to do some more research. If you're like me and you like to research and learn new things, then I definitely recommend researching a little bit more about the effects of trauma and the effects of separation and loss. One book I've recommended again and again is The Connected Child by Karen Purvis. Now, this book really, in many ways, gives a lot of practical information for how to parent a child from hard places. However, they also give some good background information about why these things affect our children, why these situations, they go into some of the possible situations your child could have gone through, and then what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, and how you will need to parent to respond to that. I'm going to tell you, I don't think everything in this book is perfect. I've read it a couple times. There are things in it that have worked for us. There are things in it that have not worked for us. But overall, it is a great resource. So I'll link this in the description as well if you want to check it out on Amazon. Definitely worth a read, especially if you're just kind of starting your adoption journey, just to get an idea for what you're getting yourself into. So there you have it. I hope that clears up a little bit about what special needs adoption really means, and that you can have a better understanding of kind of what you're getting yourself into if you are deciding to adopt, whether it's from foster care or through another route. If you would like to talk through this and your personal feelings and personal questions, that is where an adoption consultation comes in very handy. Now, if all you need is to talk through whether or not adoption is right for you, I recommend just that 1 hour session that is at a lower price point, just because that does not involve me searching for adoption agencies for you. And if you're just deciding if adoption's right for you, you don't really need that yet. If you're like, that is me, I could use a little extra guidance, I could use someone to answer all these burning questions I have, then go ahead and click the link in the description box or in that pinned comment and sign up for that 1 hour consultation. Thank you so much for stopping by and for watching this video. And if you're not subscribed yet and you enjoyed hanging out today, I hope you'll subscribe so we can hang out a little more. Thanks again for watching. I hope you're having an awesome day. I'll see you next week and you're the best.